Just an imperfect living.
Greetings, folks. Welcome to the program. Glad to have you here with us. My name is Greg Willits from RosaryArmy.com.
And I'm Jennifer Willits, his wife.
And today's a crafty day, somewhat. It's also a liturgical day, somewhat. We're going to be talking about liturgy and crafty stuff with our author of the day. It's Erica Tighe Campbell. She's the author of this book right here. It's called Living the Seasons, Simple Ways to Celebrate the Beauty of Your Faith Throughout the Year. She's the owner and artist behind beaheart.com, which is a popular Christian modern lifestyle brand. She has all sorts of like textiles and accessories and party goods and all these kinds of fun things that you can find on her website. Again, it's beaheart.com. We're so excited to share with you this conversation with Erica Tighe Campbell about living the seasons. So, Erica, you're very crafty. If you could only have one craft for the rest of your life, all the others had to go away. Stamping, paper stuff, baking, whatever it is. What's the one craft you would have on your desert island?
Okay, well, this is an interesting question because it is how I even got started in creating the company that I have, that I was looking for something to do in the evenings to help with my anxiety. Like I needed something to do with my hands. And I lived in New York City in this tiny apartment with roommates. So I was like, I can't have stuff everywhere. It needs to be able to be pulled out and put away within the day. And so I taught myself calligraphy in that time of my life. And so I think I will always go back to, that's kind of my bread and butter and the thing that relaxes me and that I enjoy and like is just my.
I love that. In my youth, I was drawn to calligraphy. Like it seems that once you know it's out there and that those pens exist where you could practice your own hand at writing something beautifully, you just have to try it. I know I went through that phase, and then I was quickly frustrated how it doesn't look as good as the example.
I know.
And then once you figure out, okay, I got it, I can do the lines, then you're immediately looking for something to write. I didn't know what to write with my beautiful handwriting. So what kind of things did you write once you mastered or at least improved your skills in the art of calligraphy?
I would say improved. I mean, I was just talking about this the other day that when I started, it was around the time hand lettering became really big around this time. It was like I learned, my mom had taught me calligraphy as a kid in like the old fashioned way. And then in about, it was 2012, 2013, where hand lettering kind of took over everything. It was before there were a lot of classes. So it was like me doing a lot of trial and error. But it was the same time that Instagram became popular. So I started sharing like what I was lettering, and I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I had the guts to share that publicly. Like it was not good, but for me, it actually had nothing to do with what it really looked like. It was more like the process and the experience of, my favorite thing about calligraphy is that you can't go fast. Like if you go fast, your pen is going to splatter, like ink goes everywhere. So I really had to slow down. And that was something I struggled with doing. And so it was this meditative experience. And Pinterest, it was kind of the heyday of Pinterest. So it was finding quotes or things that were inspiring me that I was then contemplating while I was doing the calligraphy. So I would share those on Instagram. And it's really like the genesis of Be a Heart and what it is today. It really started with sharing like the quote and then a reflection of like why I chose the quote.
Now that's beautiful. And that makes a lot of sense as opposed to when I was tinkering with calligraphy in the 1980s. I didn't yet complete my conversion or entry into the Catholic Church. So that's probably why there was a lack of quotes that I would dip into as an 11-year-old girl, not knowing anything about faith really. And so that makes a difference. But Greg, I don't really remember you talking about calligraphy as ever being in your life. However,
yeah, I think it's because when my sister one of my sisters got married when I was in 6th grade, and I remember her going through this calligraphy period where she wanted to address all of the envelopes in calligraphy, and so again,
it's a girl thing.
Yeah, so I'm in 6th grade. I don't know. It did something to me that I was like, this is. But I've always appreciated handwriting. I remember very, very specifically in my sophomore year, like the first 2 months of my sophomore year, sort of discovering my handwriting. and in an English class, and I remember sitting there all of a sudden going, "This is what I'm doing now is different than what I normally do, but what I'm doing now
Mm.
looks cool." And like I felt like I invented my own type of handwriting, and I don't know
Right,
where
you
it
kind
came
of
from.
learn, you know, for so long growing up and you're learning cursive, and it has to look exactly like what the book is like and your teacher. And I remember thinking in 3rd grade, like, my teacher's handwriting doesn't look like this, but she's telling me, like, mine needs to look like this.
Yeah.
And it was like, eventually you get to the stage where you get to kind of put your own spin on things, and it feels exciting and fun. And the thing I really love about hand lettering too, I have a whole book on hand lettering, but I was living in Brazil and I lived with a lot of other people from different countries. And you notice like the French people kind of had a like certain look to, even though it was different, there was a look to it. Americans, Brazilians had a different look. And the thing, like, you know what the handwriting of your loved ones
Mhm.
is. So when you get a piece of mail, you immediately know who sent it by the lettering. You don't even have to see. And it's something so personal, which
Yeah.
you don't think about that often. But really we have such a particular way of writing that is personal to us. And so it's interesting when you get into it.
It makes me think of Christmas time. Whenever
Yes,
we're
all
terrible about
cards.
sending out cards, right? But we get them, and we love receiving cards. And a dear friend of mine from 8th and 9th grade, I moved away from this place after 9th grade. She still sends a Christmas card to us every year, and I'll just walk in, and even Jennifer's like, I just hold it up. Who's this from? And she knows exactly who the card's from. You know, it's like,
Nobody loops an S like that girl.
yeah. Susan has the loopiest
Okay.
S's of anybody. Yeah.
I have to tell you this year's revelation that I had. So I like prize Christmas cards. I love that time of year. I love receiving them. And I, as a calligrapher, you know, I did a lot of hand lettering for people, you know, like for weddings or all of these different things. And so I used to hand address them all. And then I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So the last 2 years, I have taken photos and prepared the cards and not sent out the cards. Christmas time is insane, like especially as a small business owner, it is, and a Catholic business, like really, Christmas is our time of year. Like we would not exist without the holiday season. So it's very challenging. And I was feeling really bad about it. Like, not so much like I enjoy receiving them. So I wanted to send them. And then this year I was like, what if I just sent out Easter cards? Like it's a lower time of stress for me. I have 50 days that I could get these cards in the mail and it will still be relevant. So I had my friend take photographs of my kids in their Easter outfits, which are also very cute, like very cute Eastery spring outfits. And I do now need to address them all, but I was like, why had I not ever, I just thought like, I have to do this because this is when everyone else does this. And I made a new rule for myself that like, we will be the people who send out Easter cards.
Wow, that's amazing. And you know what? That card will undoubtedly get a lot of attention from the recipient because there's no
Right.
competition.
There's no competition.
It's like Erica's
Exactly.
so thoughtful, sending us Easter cards, and she sent us a Christmas one too, right? I think she did.
Okay,
Yeah, she did. Let's just say that she did.
I'm
It's
like
like
doubling up.
you'll get credit even if you didn't send it. You know, they'll just assume you did.
Exactly.
So, are all the headings in your book your handwriting, or was that a font? So, yeah, that's
Yeah,
okay.
no,
So that's super
mine.
cool
It's my
then.
letter.
So you had to sit there and write out each one of those things. I I I want to get to the book, but I don't want to get to the book too fast. Living the Seasons. There's so many things that we can cover from that, but I'm really curious about your creative process, and we talked about the calligraphy, but reading your bio, looking at what's in the book, having sort of I used to say I'm not a crafty person, but I think I am a crafty person. I think I default to that. I've always been artistic. I've always drawn. I've always painted. I've always written. But here we have a nonprofit that we've been running for over 20 years that's dedicated to making things, making rosaries out of twine. So I've sort of embraced that craftiness, right? I find myself now as an older man looking for new things. What's that draw for you? Do you find yourself getting bored with a craft and then wanting to pivot to a new one? Do you find yourself constantly searching, or are you fed with calligraphy alone, with a single craft alone?
I think that there is something I do enjoy about learning something new, and I think you all probably understand this, like in running a small business. I taught myself everything. So like it started with calligraphy, then I had to learn how to do the Adobe programs, and I had to learn how to produce a product, and I had to learn how to bring them in and how to market it. And this has all been like me figuring it out along the way. So I think there's a part of me that's like innate.
Mm.
And so craftiness, I do enjoy learning different things. I am in a season of my life that, I've got 2 young kids, I'm pregnant and running a business. So there hasn't been a lot of crafting time available. And so I think that I've been going through this like, okay, if I had time, what would I want to do? Like, is there something? So I taught myself how to punch needle, which is like a yarn thing, but it's easy to learn. Like I had to do something that was just like kind of easy.
I'm laughing
But then
because
when
you had a pause between punch and needle. You said, I taught myself how to punch needle.
Needle.
And I
What?
immediately was like, your poor husband. It's like,
doing some boxing.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were
Then,
going to say.
like it led to me making a product of punch needle, like a kit. I was like, oh, I could make something like that. That's really cool. So I'm in an odd season where there isn't a lot of downtime. And I think that, but there is something novel of, learning something new. But there is also a beauty, and I will say I always default to doing hand lettering and things. It's something that like I can connect with. So I don't know. I'm thinking of my childhood self. I did always want to go to the craft store and then would not complete the project to like full. I'd do like half, and then I'd be interested in the new thing. And as someone with ADHD, like there is something about like the next thing,
That's something you definitely can relate to.
what,
I'm
wanting
sure.
the next thing?
Yeah.
Look,
And I think, I don't know if this is part of the common link between artists and creatives, is that it seems to me that they like this the sandbox, the playground, where the whole thing is the creative process, and you play with one thing, you make one thing, but then you're like, oh, but I want to go over there and I want to make that. And everything is fun and everything's creative. And nothing is ever really wasted, which is interesting about the creative process. And perhaps the skill that you just only halfway developed will come back in another season where you'll dip into that once again.
Right.
And but I'm not, I don't have the same creative juices as, say, my husband or you. But I appreciate it and I can dabble a little bit. So when I see this beautiful book of yours, I'm like, oh boy, this is intimidating to me, where I'm just drawn. I'm like a numbers gal. I'm like, hey, I can balance your checkbook, boy. You just give me that and I'll do it. And I can do taxes. I can do spreadsheets. But art I have to leap over there to get to that side of my brain. But what I like about your book, and I know I don't want to get too far, I want to stay on the journey of how we get there, is that there's something beautifully approachable and simple about it that is even appealing to someone of my background, which isn't necessarily arts and crafts.
Actually, that's a great segue into the book. Let's go ahead and dive into it then, because here's this book, Living the Seasons, and simple ways to celebrate the beauty of your faith throughout the year. You had to come up with all these different things where you're tying them not only to the liturgical seasons and to liturgical holidays and to other times of the year as well, but then you are basically outlining for people, taking the thinking out of it, which is great. You're basically saying, here's a recipe, not a recipe, but here's a bullet list of things that you can do to truly get more out of these days and these seasons. I can see someone getting intimidated by this and some people going overboard. How did you find a balance? How do you bring a balance, I should say, to living the seasons in this book?
Yeah, I think what I started to notice online, and I like to preface in talking about the book that I'm not like an expert on liturgical living. And it's something that like, I think in who I am and creating things and enjoying doing things with my hands with my kids and like recognizing that. And I think what happens online and what I notice other moms, especially young moms who are susceptible to feeling like they need to be like, they need to do all the things to make sure they're holy enough and I better keep up with this and that. And I think that that's missing the point too. And so really with the book, what I hoped was that it wasn't something that became another item on the to-do list, or like that you need to do all of these things, or that this is what you have to do to be holy, because you could do absolutely none of them and still live a holy life if you're connected with God. And so what I wanted the book to be was more of an invitation that someone could have the book in its beauty sitting on the coffee table and say, I have some extra time. I think we're always we tend to default to like our phones and watching TV when we have like a little bit of time. And I didn't want the book to just be for moms, that it's just kids crafts, because a lot of them, are like, my kids couldn't do a lot of the crafts. And to have different things, some of them are just journaling prompts, like let's dive into what does this saint teach us, and it has nothing to do with the craft. So for me, it's like, how do you choose which days are important to your family or to you or your own spiritual life? Which saints resonate with you, or picking one thing that you're going to do within a season instead of feeling like you need to do it all. And then it can then the next year you can choose a different saint. And so really what I hope for it is that it is a companion for people kind of in all seasons. I mean, the seasons name has become so much more than just like the liturgical seasons for the book, but what does it teach us about our lives, of like how God journeys with us through seasons, and choosing what feels possible today. And like for me, I hadn't really done much. Like I got a little burnt out on all the crafts. I mean, it was a lot of things to make in a short period of time with a 5-month-old baby. And so for Holy Week, I was like, okay, I've got 2 little kids. We aren't making it to evening services. There's no way. Like, they're starting at when we're doing bedtime. And what would be important for me to do at home? And so really the only thing that we did as a family in Holy Week was the washing of feet. And we did it with our little girls. And it was a beautiful moment. And I didn't feel the pressure of like, I have to do all of this. And now I've taken all the joy out of it because I feel this pressure to do everything. And so really, like, I don't know, I always go back to an invitation. What is the invitation here? And my girls love to celebrate birthdays. So we like to celebrate Mary's birthday. And we, like, how can we have cake? Pretty much they just want anything where you can have like a cake. So I lean into that, and like,
That's
Can
great.
I tell you something? While we were waiting
me.
for you to join the call, as your book was sitting here, Jennifer looked at the cover and said, so I'm pretty sure the takeaway from this is we're supposed to eat cake.
So let's talk about the beautiful image that graces the cover of your book.
Yeah.
So tell us about what this craft is about, where there's saints,
So this will
with
be
candles.
celebrated soon for Pentecost. When we first started, I had someone, Augusta, she helped me write this book. And she was our social media manager. So she started sharing like ways to celebrate. And I had made some party goods because I was working in the party industry in Los Angeles as a calligrapher. And I'm like, wow, we have no like fun plates or cups, or like the baptism or first communion. You have the same design that from my first communion in the 90s, which I have now found out they are the same plates that were designed in the 20s. It hasn't, that like those ones that are in Party City, like there's no change. So I was like, okay, we could update those. And then if we're going to do that, like I love to plan a party. So I'm going to come up with some ideas that would be easy for moms to like plan a party around these days. And then that turned into Augusta running with it of simple ways to celebrate feast days. And I want to say she had this idea like to cut like a coloring sheet of, I've kind of, maybe she suggested putting fruit on a cake for Pentecost because you have the fruit of the Spirit. But my brain like goes like pretty far. And I was like, what if I made little saints and then you put them on candles and then you lit the candle and then the fire is on their head because
That
that's
is
what happened at Pentecost.
brilliant. So the saints themselves, are they just made out of paper? Are those like
Those
printouts?
are just paper. Yeah. So we have the download. How it started a couple years ago, you just download it and then like cut them out. So I had drawn the saints. I should make them into like real candles. I just haven't quite gotten to
Yeah,
that
like,
yet.
and the candle is placed separately
It's just
behind the
behind it.
paper.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like you put the saint on a toothpick and then you just kind of place it in front of like a little candle.
Did you
And
take all the
then for
pictures?
the
Like,
kids,
did you take this picture that's on the cover?
so my friend did. We had a 5-day photo shoot for every
Okay,
photo that is
all
in
right.
that book.
Oh
I'm
my,
looking through this. I'm going,
that's
if
aggressive.
she wrote it and then did the lettering and took all the pictures and came up, I'm like,
Yeah, no.
was this like a 20-year book that you know to take you to write that? So 5 days of okay, that makes a lot of sense. Then. Okay.
5
Yeah.
very busy
So-
days.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go back to what you're saying.
But the book, so they wanted to put this picture on the cover. I'm like, you guys, this was the last photo that we took because we had not done it. The cake was too small for the cake plate that I had. So we were like trying, and then we forgot to take the brown thing off from underneath it.
Now you can see it.
And-
I never even noticed it until you just said that.
No
So
one would notice until, and they're like, no one's going to notice this. But the point was that it doesn't have to be perfect. Like I didn't bake that cake. I don't bake. I don't like to bake. I bought the cake and then I put the little things on top. And so really like what, you know, as we're doing this is like, it's not about perfection. It's really about like doing things to make these concepts come alive or like have little ways that we can remember them more. And especially for a kid, I mean, you got cake and you got fire, like
This is it right
you
here.
got, yeah.
And here's something I plan on using this book because as a mom, I'm a little bit further in the season.
Right. You guys
know.
are,
Our youngest is 15 and I'm giving her driving lessons. So she's already shifting into a new social life. You know, you can, not that she's pulling away as a person, but, you know, it begins in the teens when they begin to drive, you know, all that happens. And so I kind of am going to be looking to this book when hopefully I'm a grandparent. And, you know, as you're raising the grandchild, sometimes the grandparent needs activities. You just need something to do with your grandchild. So especially when they get to the age, maybe 3 and 4, when they're just able to hold the scissors and they're able to get their hands into those fine motor skills, you know, where they can really participate in crafts and stuff like that. I'm going to be using this. I want to be that Catholic grandma. You know, like, come on, we're going to do this.
Okay, well, I will say, like, as someone who liked crafts as a teenager, like this book would have been, like, I would have loved this as I was discovering more of my faith life, learning how to do. Some of them they're not kids crafts in there.
Well,
Like some
okay,
of them
now.
are challenging.
Would you have done it on your own, or if your mom went to you and says, "Hey, come do this with me"? Because there's the
So it
difference.
would be like you leave the book out on the table, and it's so pretty that they're like, "Huh, what's in here?"
Okay.
And
Yeah, put it
then
out like
there becomes
bait.
interest. And like I think about it, you know, the time I was learning calligraphy, like that was the time I had more time. I was a young professional. I had graduated from college. I had time in the evening, so I was looking for something to do. And I think that so much of the liturgical living resources are geared towards kids, but it's not just a kid thing. Like we're all called to this. And so really what I wanted was that like a grandma could pull activities to do with her grandchildren, but she could also do them when she's at home, you know, in the evening and you're watching TV with your husband and you want something to like unwind from the day, that there is something kind of for everyone. Because I have other friends who are making liturgical living things that are probably even better for kids, like for littles. But what about like the rest of us or even like the mom who, you know, we're at our kids' disposal all day, every day. And when they go to bed, I kind of want something to do that's not like about them. So one of my favorite activities from the book, I keep going back to this punch needling. I learned it. And then I made on for All Saints Day, I came up with this idea to make a pillow, like a throw pillow. And I was like, it'd be really cool if you had the saint head on there, and then you make the halo out of a punch needle, it's kind of like a fuzzy, like raised yarn situation. And
I got to look it up now.
Yeah, because I don't. When you say punch needle, like I can't
Okay,
quite
so look up
visualize
on
what
all,
that is.
look in the book,
sure,
like,
sure,
All
sure.
All Saints Day. And so that one like is not a kid's craft.
Okay.
But
okay,
it's
this
really
fits.
relaxing to do.
So is the punch needle thing on All Saints Day in the book?
If
Okay.
you look at like All Saints,
Okay.
if you look up
Okay.
All Saints, it's in there. And so I think that that's, the saints have maybe even more to teach us as adults than as children. It might be the very last, because All Saints Day it's
Yeah.
like Christ the King is the very, very last.
There it is.
And
There it
then,
is.
oh wait, you just,
Yep, there
Yep.
it is. Okay. So you punch it in and you pull it back out again. You know what it reminds me of? I think
wow.
I know what this.
Maybe
I know what this is.
hook-
This is like the hook rugs that we used to make back in the 70s and 80s.
yeah.
But it seems to be a little different because it's kind of curved over rather than like frayed outward, where
Yeah.
the ends of the yarn aren't sticking out, so it looks like a shag effect. This
Right.
is a little bit different.
It's a similar motion.
Yeah.
Oh,
I can handle that.
Here, you can.
That's my skill.
Jennifer can handle the cardboard saint faces with
Yes.
that's more what you'd be doing.
That's what we should hang around the office, the studio.
Yeah. We could
Our
just-
community of
See,
saints.
if we had planned, we could have done this in advance. We could have just made all the crafts, had them hanging in the background in the studio.
Okay, here's something I
Missed opportunity.
want to do because I'm in the market for an Advent wreath. I've used mine to death, and now it's all frayed and got too much wax all over it. And so I want something really beautiful, but I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to make beautiful like faux pine needles with just lush and full with the candle sticking out of it. I want it to be a circle. So how do you approach this stuff? Do you make all your things like this, your liturgical decor?
Yeah. So I came out with this idea for an Advent wreath because I was like, well, why are they all so outdated? It doesn't look like my other things that I own in my home. And so our Advent wreath is one of our best sellers. And I was just researching like vintage Advent wreaths. And in Germany in the 20s, I found one. It was on eBay. There was only one of them made out of milk glass, and it had wells for water. And I was like, well, that's brilliant, because the thing that happens when you're making an Advent wreath is that then your pine needles die. And then you just have dead pine needles by the time you get to Christmas. It's everywhere and annoying. So I made this, I drew the concept for a modernized version of this that you can put water into, so that you can then, like, it's very simple. You can cut some stuff outside and you don't really have to fully know what you're doing. You just kind of plop in the pines, no way or another. And then you have this Advent wreath that's living, so your needles aren't going to die.
And so every year it's new. It's
right.
You have no choice but to stuff it with new life, new leaves. I like that.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
To gently fill it with new life, not
Yeah.
stuff it with new life.
Yeah.
To gently and lovingly and craftily place real
you know, I
live
think,
branches
like,
in there.
Fronds.
You have a 15-year-old and you can say, like, hey, to be a part of instead of just like, here's our Advent wreath, hey, could you go pick out some pines and like put this together? We do it with the girls. Like, I get the pines and then I have them help me, in a very Montessori way, but there's buy-in to it. Like, you get to participate in this.
Well, what works
thing.
best in the Advent wreath? You mentioned pine, but there's got to be other species of leaf varieties that work well.
I mean, so we live in Arizona, and previously we're living in Texas, so we didn't have a ton of pine around, So for mine, I just go to Trader Joe's and I buy even a eucalyptus is really beautiful.
Oh,
because
Trader Joe's to the rescue. Okay.
they're always
They got their
when in doubt,
plants going
Trader
on.
Yeah.
I'm taking notes on this.
Yeah, it's like I suddenly realized that this conversation with you, Erica, has just become Jennifer stealing all your ideas.
What?
I'm going.
You don't know me.
It's shared.
Yeah,
That's the joy.
I thought it was going to be about the book and about your website and about your journey in the Catholic Church, and it's all just about how Jennifer could have a better Advent wreath later on this year. Go to Trader Joe's. It's spelled Joe. There we go. That's right. So,
Hey, never prepare too early.
so I love talking about the creative experience with people, and whenever we have authors on the program, I always ask the same question, and I never get the answers that I'm hoping I'm going to get.
It's terrible.
Well, I ask the question of like, I want to know what their writing process is. And I would say that 90% of Catholic authors say, well, I open up Microsoft Word and I start typing until I'm done. But there's no software, there's no creative database or anything. And that's how I go about doing things. I want to overcomplicate it. So what I feel like with you, though, I can ask in terms of the creative process, particularly how you fell in love with calligraphy as a healing way of seeking out something greater in life. I really would love to hear how creativity is such a part of your life that you can't live without it almost. And where does that come from? Were your parents creative, or was it something that just kind of spawned on its own out of necessity in your life?
Well, both of my parents are accountants by
So it spawned out of necessity in your life, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but I will say my mother is she's very creative in different ways. And my grandmother was an interior designer, and she was very good at her craft in a time where women weren't working, and she had this whole business. And so sometimes I feel like I am channeling her. But what I really found as I was in college, and then from college, I moved to Brazil. I was volunteering for an organization who our mission, our charism was to be like Mary at the foot of the cross, where you were just with people. And that is where Be a Heart stems from, that you don't have to do, but you really are just a heart for people in the world and who's around you. But when I moved there, so I was living in Chicago. I went to school at DePaul University, and I discovered the art museum. And so I would go to the art museum, and this was a time of my life that was very dark. I was, like many kids that age, like really kind of floundering of like, who am I? What am I doing? And so I would go to the art museum, and it was this time of like getting outside of myself. And I felt the experience of enjoying the art that other people had created years and years ago that could connect me with something greater than myself. Like I could get outside of myself and experience this. And so when I was living in Brazil, I lived in our community, was a bit different than others in this organization. We lived in a village, like a small village outside of the slums. And we lived with other children who they were not orphans. It wasn't an orphanage, but their parents were unable to care for them. They had lived a lot of traumatic experiences in their lives. And then we also had moms who wanted to restart their lives. We had a retreat center so people could come from their difficult life for a break. But I was put in charge of the school and had no resources. We're in the middle of this forest in Brazil. And the one thing that I knew was that beauty and art can connect people. Like there's a healing experience in that. And so I started to, we were learning about all different artists. We would go into I got donations, and we went into the city to the art museum, and I watched the kids learning how to process the trauma that they had lived in their lives through these artistic experiences. Or like you said, even learning calligraphy, like it doesn't look like what I want it to look like. And I could just throw it away and never revisit it. But there's something about learning perseverance. There's something about growing through that. And so for me, I watched it transform these children who, had anger, who had deep sadness, and give them a way to express themselves. And so when I moved back to the States after this, I was there for 18 months. I once again, like, the reintegration into US life
Mm-hmm.
was challenging. I was right back to this dark place that I had come from. And so I recalled, like, oh wait, I saw this work for the kids that I was working with. Like, I also need to turn to this as a way to connect with God. It was really, I think this quote can get overused, that like beauty will save the world. But in my own life, like, beauty saved my own life. It gave me something to look forward to grow through, to process what I was experiencing. And so, it can seem so silly, like making products that can, our mission is that our products will share the hope and light of Christ. And it's silly to think like a baby blanket can do that. But what are these little reminders, these beauty reminders, these things that are tactile, that can remind us, that we're not alone, that God is with us, and that we are connected to each other. And so, I think for me, it has proven over the years to be I'm blanking on like what would be the right word for this, but a grounding experience, or a connecting experience, or something I can return to when, like, the going gets tough.
Yeah, I was going to say anchor. It sounded like what you were describing as an
Yes,
anchor.
anchor.
It's
Yeah, I'm like grounding.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
That's interesting. And when you're doing certain creative activities, I I feel like I don't know if you've ever read the book The War of Art, not the art of war, but the war of art, and the whole idea of resistance that comes into it. Do you find that even though you love doing these things, that resistance sometimes comes into play? And in particular, do you find the resistance stronger when you're trying to do creative things that have some sort of a faith-based background to them and sorts? And I'd be curious what your response would be to that.
Yeah, where things are today, I think, in the process, you will always hit the resistance, and it's, I'll try to be working on something because I need to make this product, so I need a design for it, and I'm getting nowhere, and I'm pushing, and it's like when you're trying to make something happen, and I think it is much like life. And so for me, learning time and time again to like relax back and let the Holy Spirit work, that there is this beauty that happens in working with the Holy Spirit, and that there is less resistance if it can come authentically from my own experience, which is the reality of God in my life. Like, who is God? What is that? God is what is my reality right now. And so if I can create out of that space, the ideas are plentiful.
So the website is Be a Heart, and that's your storefront. That's where people can find a lot of the things that you've created along with your team, and from that came the book Living the Seasons, and obviously you can get the book from from beaheart.com, but you can also get it from Ave Maria, the publisher. These two things. Do you see yourself doing a part 2 of this book at someday? It's such a huge challenge. It's like, would you want to?
Yeah, I will never say no to things. I will not do it again while I have young children. It was an experience of too much. And the last year has been me learning how to maybe say no to more things to tend to my family.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I think, it's yeah, I guess you just kind of never know. But I will also say I never even planned on having a business that was of this size and magnitude. And I think, I'm the first one to be surprised by the whole thing. I think maybe the next book I would write, because books, it's just a lot. It's a lot. I'm sure of every author, or in Do you guys have books? I feel
Yeah,
like, did I see that you have a book
yeah.
on it?
We've done a few.
It's been a while, but that's
It
okay.
it's like
It's a lot of work.
it's been a while because
It's
it,
a lot of
like,
work.
it's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah, and so
I wanted to,
yeah,
one, congratulate you on your current pregnancy. And I was curious,
thank
what
you.
number of child is this for you?
This is number 3.
Number 3. Oh, wow. So they
Yeah,
are,
so
and the oldest is 4 or 3?
4.
4.
She just turned
So the joke here is now that you're going to 3, you're moving from man to man to zone defense. Is what's going to be happening.
right.
That's the
Yeah, we're
Catholic.
pretty nervous.
That's the
I will
Catholic joke.
say, like, I think you go in the first time, you just have no idea what to expect. You are clueless. We went in, we have a very early COVID baby. She was born January 2020. So that was threw a real curveball in a lot of things. And then you think you're ready. You're like, okay, we're like feeling good. And you have your second. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this is actually harder than the first. And now we've got 2. And then the third, we're like, we know too much and we're still choosing to do it. So we are kind of gearing up, really in all of this and in my work, gearing up to how to set myself up for success when the baby comes in 14 weeks, to survive maybe like a little better than last time.
That's exciting.
I barely remember when the third one showed up. I remember when the fourth and the fifth showed up. But I feel like once the third arrives, it was relatively easier than the first 2. The first 2 was a lot of trial and error. And our grown sons who are now married will tell you that they sometimes feel like they were the trial and error. And we're like, and we apologize profusely to them now.
We're sorry.
As well as to their spouses. We're sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry that we did that.
I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Like there is the last we are in a season right now that like feels a bit calm. But my daughter was sick all the time. And so navigating sickness and toddler, and we moved states. So it's been a lot. And everyone's like, even now, like my 4-year-old can get something. Like she could go get a water glass for both her and her sister. And so I keep thinking like, oh, that's the difference. I'm going to have a baby, but I'm also going to have this other little person who can be a bit more help.
Yes.
And then everyone says after 3, it's no different. Add 4 or 5.
Right.
just-
I mean, if you're already cooking for 5, you can cook for 6. It's really, not much more at that point, And you're right, they do help. The children they come back and they give you assistance. And that's kind of the secret of big families is that mom has a lot of hands to help her with what needs to get done. And it really is beautiful.
I just stumbled upon a video the other day. I wish I had bookmarked it or something. It was on my computer, and I don't even know when this was, but it had to have been 10 plus years ago. And I walked into the kitchen when 2 of the boys were washing dishes, and the oldest one was trying to tell the next one that he's doing it wrong and wanted to explain. So they're arguing, and I just hit record on my phone. I didn't say a word. It's just how the volume was like this when I walked in, where it was super high. And as I just recorded, it got quieter and quieter and quieter as they just it went from yelling at each other to just scowling at each other to just washing the dishes. And I watched that video and went, I think we actually did something right. I didn't realize it at the time because it looked like it just, but apparently the boys were taught how to, stop arguing all the time. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. It seemed appropriate, and I bring it up, but once I said it, I realized that didn't have anything to do with what we were saying.
I mean, it's different. Like at the time, I think that's what it is that, for me, one, I don't like being pregnant. I find the experience to be very challenging, and
difficult on
like
the body.
I'll have the kid. The kids are okay, but the pregnancy is very challenging. And I think when you're in it, it can feel like it's never going to end. And one thing, I've been talking a lot about seasons because of the book, but it is seasons. And when you're in it, it is really hard to see your way out. And I think, as a young mom, of recognizing like we need community and we need people who can say like, oh, wow, I found this video, like it does get better, or it does change, or this isn't forever. Because it's like when you can say like, oh, just enjoy those moments. We miss those moments, but you can also say like, yeah, oh, I remember that was so hard. Like that's more important in our way of walking with each other. And I will hold the hope. The Easter, I always go back to this. We learn in Easter, we hold the hope for each other. So like right now it's really challenging. And I can say to my cousin just had a baby, her first baby. And she's like, how are you doing? How are you going to have 3? Like, I can't do this. And I'm like, I know it is the hardest thing. That first baby is so hard. And I'm going to hold the hope for you that it will get better. And you can complain to me all you want right now, because it's just objectively hard.
Yeah. But it's
but it is a one day at a time thing. To me, that's what's so great about newborns is they don't need a lot in the beginning, assuming everything, mom and baby are healthy. I mean, I know I have to preface it with that, but they just want to sleep and eat and poop. I mean, that's it.
And I think the biggest thing too for new moms, like it's learning to just do that or like relax in it, because we're so used to doing. And then the third time you realize like, ooh, I'm going to take advantage of this and I'm going to like lean in. But that first one, it's hard to like, you think it's never going to end. Like,
oh yeah. I mean,
you can just be stuck.
I do remember selfishly back in the day, when baby number 3, baby number 4, like, well, I'm nursing, so I'm busy. You have to deal with the kids. And I have my iPhone and I'm nursing for like 30 minutes.
As the kid gets bigger and bigger and bigger because she's not paying attention.
I mean, really, smartphones have revolutionized the size of my children because I was on the phone totally letting that baby just sleep and eat for like, forever.
Yeah.
Well, Erica, thank you for being on the program, for talking about living the seasons and be a heart. I could talk forever about the creative process. I find it so fascinating, and all the different things that you have on your website. I have like 1,000 logistics questions that our audience wouldn't care about. I'm like, well, but what did you build? And what? So I won't go there. But thank you for being here, and thank you for the work that you've done.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So how much have you ordered off of beaheart.com just since we talked to Erica?
I know I'm getting that Advent wreath.
That was pretty nice.
I mean, I have to get her Advent wreath. It's a done deal for me.
So what happened to you making it yourself? That was what you asked her?
Because it's both. It's what
it's me thinking about making my own and then not buying it instead from someone else.
No,
it's both.
What you're buying is the base. And then every year you put fresh candles in it, which I do every year. I buy new Advent candles, and then every year you can change up your frond leaf arrangement because you're picking that out and putting it into the holds of the holder. And so that every year it's new, and I'm really excited about it. But what this is a really good, pretty base to hold the candles and the leaves.
Where are you going to get those fronds from around here, though?
Oh, I can go to a Trader Joe's or a Hobby Lobby, or there's places where you can buy different styles of leaves, either fake or real.
Oh, okay.
Preferably, I'd like it to be real.
I like that. So Hobby Lobby, you can't get them real. That's good.
No, but
and
at Trader Joe's you can.
That's too far away. So
I can drive, or Lily can drive me there. She's learning how to drive. It's good.
You're freaking people out when you bring up stuff like that. Don't
15.
Don't let people know that our daughter's driving now. So because it kind of freaks me out as well. Thank you for being here with us, and as always, we encourage you to pray your rosary every single day
and do whatever it takes to be holy.
RosaryArmy.com if you'd like a free rosary, we'll send you that. SchoolofMary.com if you want to grow deeper in your faith. All that's free as well. Talk to you again very soon. RosaryArmy.com/donate if you want to help our work. God bless you, folks.